How old are they? 6.
At 10:17 on a bright Tuesday morning in Daegu, Adwoa Mensim walked into the 23rd floor of Seorin legal chambers, carrying a cream folder that held the final papers ending her marriage. 6 years had passed since she had last stood in the same city as Park Do-gyeom, the Korean billionaire she had once believed she would grow old beside. She had rehearsed this morning for weeks. Walk in, sit down, sign, leave. No arguments, no memories, no questions she was no longer willing to answer. But the moment Do-gyeom lifted his eyes from the documents on the conference table and looked through the glass wall behind her, everything changed. His fountain pen slipped from his fingers and struck the polished table. Adwoa froze. She did not need to turn around to know what he had seen. Outside the glass meeting room, beneath a tall indoor fig tree, 2 little boys sat side by side on a cream bench. They wore identical navy sweaters over white shirts. Their warm brown skin glowed beneath the morning light pouring through the windows. Both had soft black curls, although one wore his slightly longer. One boy swung his feet restlessly above the marble floor. The other sat perfectly still, staring at the silver watch around his wrist, as though punctuality were the most important thing in the world. Do-gyeom stood slowly. Who are they? Adwoa tightened her fingers around the divorce folder. The lawyer sitting between them looked from Do-gyeom to Adwoa and quietly closed his notebook. Do-gyeom moved toward the glass. The quieter boy suddenly looked up. Their eyes met through the transparent wall. Then the child smiled. Do-gyeom stopped. It was not because the boy looked exactly like him. He did not. The child's face carried Adwoa's softness, her rounded cheeks, her warm complexion. But the smile began on the left side first, a small crooked lift before spreading fully across his face. Do-gyeom had seen that smile every morning of his childhood. It belonged to his late father, Adwoa. His voice was barely above a whisper. She stared at the table. Please sign the papers. How old are those boys? Silence. Adwoa. She looked up. 6. Something changed in his expression. They had been apart for 6 years. He looked through the glass again, this time as though the entire world outside that room had rearranged itself. If stories about buried love, painful misunderstandings, hidden truths, and second chances that arrive when nobody is ready for them keep you watching, take a moment to like this video, subscribe, and tell me where you are watching from. Because what Do-gyeom did not know was that those 2 boys were connected to the worst morning of Adwoa's life. 6 years earlier, Adwoa had arrived in Daegu from Ghana with 2 suitcases, a conservation scholarship, and a promise to herself that she would never build her future around another person's money. She was 27. A gifted textile conservator invited to restore ceremonial fabrics for the Hannul Heritage Foundation. Park Do-gyeom was 33, disciplined, sharp-minded, and heir to Murray Haven Group, a hospitality empire known for transforming historic Korean estates into luxury cultural retreats. They disliked each other immediately. You cannot remove that panel, Do-gyeom told her during their first morning inside the restoration hall. Adwoa continued working without looking at him. I'm not removing it. You marked it for removal. I marked it for isolation, he frowned. She finally raised her head. And you're standing in my light. His assistants expected anger. Instead, Do-gyeom moved. 3 months later, he knew exactly how she took her coffee. 5 months later, she knew he telephoned his grandmother every Sunday morning, no matter which country he was in. 7 months later, he proposed inside an unfinished restoration room where long white fabrics hung from the ceiling and morning sunlight moved across the floor like water. Adwoa said yes before he finished speaking. Their marriage was quiet, private, and happier than either of them had expected. Then Do-gyeom's father died suddenly while traveling abroad. Within weeks, Do-gyeom inherited more than a company. He inherited board disputes, family pressure, unfinished debts, and relatives terrified of losing control of the empire. The affectionate man Adwoa married became difficult to reach. Breakfasts became phone calls. Weekends became meetings. Their beautiful apartment slowly filled with a silence neither of them knew how to break. Then one morning, Adwoa opened her desk drawer and found an envelope she had never seen before. Inside was a legal agreement bearing Do-gyeom's signature. It stated that any child born during their marriage would automatically be recognized as an heir of Murray Haven Group and could be placed under family residency, educational, and guardianship conditions determined by the Park Family Council. Adwoa read it again and again. That same morning, she had been holding another document in her handbag, a medical report confirming she was pregnant, with twins. She went to Do-gyeom's office carrying both papers. His assistant told her he could not see her. Adwoa waited 4 hours. He never came down. That evening, a message arrived from his phone. We will discuss what is necessary after the board vote. Please do not create another problem today. She stared at the message until the words blurred. By sunrise the next morning, Adwoa had packed one suitcase. She left the family agreement on their dining table. She placed her wedding ring beside it. Then she disappeared from Korea without telling Do-gyeom she was carrying his children. Now, 6 years later, Do-gyeom pushed open the glass door of the conference room. "Don't," Adwoa said. He stopped in front of the boys. The child wearing the watch looked up. "Are you Mr. Park?" Do-gyeom swallowed. "Yes." The boy stood politely and reached into his small backpack. He removed a sealed cream envelope. "Mum said we weren't supposed to give you this unless you asked who we were." Adwoa's face drained of color. She had never told them that. "Who told you to say that?" she asked. The boy looked confused. "The old lady who visited us." Do-gyeom slowly took the envelope. Across the front were 6 handwritten words. "For Do-gyeom, when the boys are ready." His fingers trembled. He knew the handwriting instantly. Adwoa knew it too. The letter had been written by Do-gyeom's grandmother, the same woman Adwoa believed had never known the twins existed. Do-gyeom did not open the envelope immediately. For several seconds, he simply stared at his grandmother's handwriting, while the 2 boys watched him with the patient curiosity of children who did not yet understand why every adult in the room had suddenly gone silent. Adwoa stepped closer. "Who gave that to you?" The boy with the silver watch pointed toward his brother. He saw her first. The second boy stopped swinging his feet. "She came to our school exhibition." Adwoa's stomach tightened. "When?" 3 weeks ago. Do-gyeom looked at her sharply. "You didn't know?" "No." Her answer came too quickly to be doubted. The lawyer quietly excused himself, but Do-gyeom barely noticed. His attention had settled on the envelope. "What did she say to you?" he asked the boys. The quieter child thought for a moment. "She said she knew our father." Adwoa closed her eyes. That sentence hurt more than she expected. Do-gyeom lowered himself until he was at eye level with them. "Did she tell you his name?" Both boys shook their heads. "She said grown-ups sometimes take too long to tell the truth," the watch-wearing boy replied. Do-gyeom finally broke the seal. Inside was a single sheet of ivory paper. "My dear Do-gyeom, if you are reading this, then Adwoa has finally returned, or fate has become tired of waiting for both of you. There are things I should have told you 6 years ago. Things I allowed fear to silence." Before Do-gyeom could continue, Adwoa whispered, "Stop." He looked up. "Why?" "Because whatever she wrote belongs to your family. Those boys are standing here because of my family." The words landed harder than he intended. Adwoa's expression changed. "No, they are standing here because I raised them." The older boy glanced between them. "Mum?" Adwoa immediately softened. "It's okay, Kojo." The name caught Do-gyeom's attention. Kojo. The second boy was called Sena, 2 names he had never heard, 2 lives that had existed entirely without him. He returned to the letter. "I knew Adwoa was pregnant before she left Korea." Do-gyeom stopped reading. Adwoa's face went still. "What?" he whispered. She stepped forward and took the page from his hand. Her eyes raced over the line. "That's impossible." But the letter continued. "She did not tell me. I learned from the clinic because one of our foundation physicians recognized her name and contacted the family office. I should have gone to her. Instead, I made the worst decision of my life." Adwoa's breathing became shallow. Do-gyeom read over her shoulder. "I had the guardianship agreement prepared. You signed a stack of succession documents after your father's death, and never knew that clause had been inserted among them." Adwoa looked at him. "You didn't know?" "No." The word came out broken. For 6 years, she had believed he had willingly signed away her right to raise her own children. For 6 years, he had believed she had left because she no longer wanted their marriage. A single document had destroyed both versions of the truth. Adwoa lowered herself onto the bench. Do-gyeom remained standing, but the confidence that usually surrounded him had disappeared. "Why would she do that?" he asked. Adwoa kept reading. "I was afraid. Your father had just died. The board was unstable. Several relatives believed an international marriage would weaken your succession position. I convinced myself I was protecting you. I was wrong. I sent the message from your phone, telling Adwoa not to create another problem." Do-gyeom's face lost all color. Adwoa stared at the line until her vision blurred. That message had been the final reason she left. Not the contract. Not the loneliness. The message. She had believed it was him dismissing both her pain and the pregnancy he had not yet known about. "She sent it?" Adwoa whispered. Do-gyeom could barely answer. "Yes." Sena reached for his mother's hand. She squeezed his fingers. The letter ended with one final paragraph. "I found Adwoa again 2 years ago. She refused money, refused pressure, and refused to let me disturb the boys' lives. She only allowed me to see them once from a distance. 3 weeks ago, I broke that promise. I visited them because I am running out of time, and there is one truth neither of you knows. The boys are not the only children affected by what happened 6 years ago." Adwoa stopped breathing. Do-gyeom took the letter from her trembling hand. "What does that mean?" She looked at him, terrified now for a completely different reason. Then Kojo spoke quietly. "The old lady gave us something else." He opened his backpack again. This time, he pulled out a small photograph. 3 newborn babies lay side by side beneath the same hospital blanket. Adwoa stared at the image. She recognized 2 of them immediately. The third baby was a girl. Adwoa took the photograph from Kojo with both hands. For a moment, nobody spoke. The morning light pouring through the legal office windows seemed too bright for what she was seeing. 3 newborn babies lay beneath one pale hospital blanket. 2 had tiny white identification bands around their wrists. The third, a baby girl, wore a yellow thread bracelet. Adwoa recognized the hospital immediately. She recognized the patterned blanket. She even recognized the corner of the bassinet visible behind the babies. "This was taken in Accra," she whispered. Do-gyeom moved beside her. "You're certain? I gave birth there." Her thumb trembled against the edge of the photograph. Kojo and Sena watched her carefully. Do-gyeom lowered his voice. "Were there 3 babies?" Adwoa turned toward him so quickly that he stepped back. "No." The answer was immediate. "I had twins. 2 boys. I held them both." She looked at the photograph again. There was never a girl. Sena leaned against her arm. "Mum, who is she?" Adwoa had no answer. Do-gyeom examined the back of the photograph. A date had been written there in faded blue ink. The date was 1 day after Kojo and Sena were born. Beneath it was a single initial. M. "Do you know anyone whose name begins with M?" he asked. Adwoa shook her head. Then she stopped. A memory surfaced. Not dramatic, not frightening, just strange enough that she had forgotten it. "There was a woman," she said slowly, "at the maternity residence." Do-gyeom waited. Her name was Miriam. 6 years earlier, Adwoa had rented a private room at a maternal wellness residence connected to the clinic. She had chosen it because she wanted privacy after returning to Ghana unexpectedly. Miriam Dapa had worked there as a family liaison, arranging meals, paperwork, and newborn registrations. She was cheerful, talkative, and unusually protective of Adwoa. She had also been the only person who knew Adwoa was still legally married. "She helped me register the boys," Adwoa said. "She knew I didn't want their father's family contacted." Do-gyeom's jaw tightened at the word father. "Did she know who I was?" "I never told her." Adwoa looked at him. "But maybe she found out." Kojo pointed at the photograph. "The old lady said the girl's name was Mina." Adwoa's head snapped toward him. "She told you that?" Kojo nodded. "She said Mina was the reason she had to find us." Do-gyeom crouched in front of him. "What else did she say?" The boy frowned in concentration. "She said not everything that was taken was stolen." The words sent a chill through Adwoa, even under the warm morning sun. Do-gyeom stood slowly. "We need to speak to my grandmother." Adwoa laughed once, but there was no humor in it. "After 6 years of silence, now you want answers immediately?" "Yes. I wanted answers 6 years ago." He looked at her. The anger in her face was not loud. That made it worse. "I sat outside your office for 4 hours," she continued. I was carrying 2 babies and a marriage I was still trying to save. I thought you chose a board meeting over me. Do-gyeom said nothing. And now I discover your grandmother knew I was pregnant. She found me. She watched my sons from a distance. And somehow she has a photograph from the day after I gave birth with a 3rd child beside them. Her voice cracked for the first time. So forgive me if I am not ready to run into another Park family room and trust whatever explanation comes next. Do-gyeom absorbed every word. Then he did something Adwoa did not expect. He stepped away from the boys and bowed his head slightly. You're right. She stared at him. I failed you even if I didn't send that message. I made myself unreachable enough that you believed I could have. The admission landed differently from an apology. It was heavier, more honest. Adwoa looked away before he could see what it did to her. Then Kojo tugged gently at Do-gyeom's sleeve. Mr. Park? Do-gyeom looked down. Yes? Are you our father? Silence filled the reception area. Sina stopped moving. Adwoa's heart pounded. Do-gyeom looked at her, but she did not rescue him. He knelt again, this time directly in front of both boys. I think I am, he said softly. But I only found out today. Kojo studied his face. Were you looking for us? The question broke something in him. Before he could answer, Adwoa's phone rang. She almost ignored it. Then she saw the caller name. Her former clinic. She answered immediately. Hello. A woman spoke from the other end. Ms. Mensim, I'm calling regarding a records request submitted this morning under the name Park Do-gyeom. Adwoa looked at him sharply. He shook his head. He had submitted nothing. The woman continued. Someone is trying to access the original birth records for all 3 children registered under your delivery file. Adwoa went cold. All 3? There was a pause. Yes, ma'am. 2 boys and 1 girl. Adwoa did not realize she had stood up until Sina grabbed the edge of her coat. Mum? She looked down at him, then back at Do-gyeom. They said 3 children. He was already reaching for his phone. Give me the clinic's name. No. Adwoa, you heard me. Her voice was low, controlled, but something inside her had begun to shake. Someone used your name to request those records this morning. Until we know who, you do not start calling people and making this bigger. Do-gyeom looked at the boys, then lowered his phone. Fine. The clinic administrator was still waiting on the line. Adwoa pressed the phone closer to her ear. Please tell me exactly what you can see. The woman hesitated. Your file is old, and some information is archived. But the delivery summary lists 3 infant registration numbers linked to your admission. Adwoa's mouth went dry. That is impossible. I understand, ma'am. I delivered twins. That is what your discharge record says. Adwoa closed her eyes. Then why are there 3 registration numbers? Another pause. One appears to have been transferred out of your file 24 hours after birth. Do-gyeom stepped closer. Transferred to whom? The woman heard him. I'm sorry. I can't release more by phone. You'll need to come in with identification. Adwoa stared at the photograph again. 3 babies. 1 day after delivery. A 3rd registration removed after 24 hours. We're coming, she said. 2 hours later, the bright glass entrance of a Henfi Women's Center in Accra reflected a cloudless afternoon sky. Adwoa had not planned to return to Ghana that day, but the clinic's secure archive system had confirmed something neither of them could ignore. Do-gyeom arranged the flight without argument, and for once Adwoa accepted his help without feeling that it cost her anything. The boys stayed with Adwoa's older cousin, Abena, who lived nearby and knew nothing about the truth unfolding around them. Inside the records office, an elderly administrator named Mrs. Tete placed a slim folder on the desk. I remember your case, she said. Adwoa stared at her. You remember me? You arrived alone. Mrs. Tete's expression softened. Women who arrive alone often remember every kindness. Staff remember them too. Do-gyeom sat silently beside Adwoa. Mrs. Tete opened the file. Your delivery record confirms 2 live male births. Adwoa released a breath she had not realized she was holding. Then the girl? Mrs. Tete turned another page. The 3rd registration was not created at delivery. It was attached later. By whom? A family liaison. Adwoa already knew the answer. Mariam Dapa. Mrs. Tete nodded. Do-gyeom's attention sharpened. Why would she attach another child to Adwoa's file? Mrs. Tete adjusted her glasses. Because the baby girl had no confirmed maternal record. Adwoa stared at her. No mother? Not exactly. Mrs. Tete pulled out a faded transfer slip. The girl was born in another private clinic that closed shortly afterward. She was brought here the following morning with documents claiming she was connected to your family file. Claiming? Do-gyeom asked. Mrs. Tete nodded. There was a note authorizing temporary placement while identity was being verified. Adwoa leaned forward. Who signed it? Mrs. Tete turned the slip around. The signature at the bottom was not Miriam's. It belonged to a Korean woman. Park Do-gyeom. Do-gyeom's grandmother. For several seconds, he did not move. She was here? According to the file, yes. Adwoa's eyes filled with disbelief. She told us she only found me 2 years ago. Mrs. Tete looked confused. Then that was not true. She came here 6 years ago. The room seemed to tilt. Do-gyeom pressed his fingers against his forehead. His grandmother had known from the beginning. She had come to Ghana. She had entered the clinic. She had signed paperwork involving a third baby, and then she had let both of them live 6 years believing entirely different lies. What happened to the girl? Adwoa asked. Mrs. Tete reached for the final page. She was removed from your file the next day and transferred into private guardianship. Whose guardianship? Do-gyeom asked. Mrs. Tete looked at him for a long moment before answering. A Korean national named Lee Sang-won. Adwoa turned toward Do-gyeom. His face changed instantly. You know him. He did not answer immediately. Then he whispered, he was my father's closest friend. Adwoa felt the meaning before she understood it. Mrs. Tete continued carefully. There is one more thing. She slid a sealed laboratory report across the desk. A kinship test was ordered before the transfer. Do-gyeom broke the seal. His eyes moved across the page once. Then again. Adwoa watched the blood drain from his face. What does it say? He looked at her. The girl was tested against my father. Adwoa's breath caught. And? Do-gyeom lowered the page. She was his biological daughter. Senavi Do-gyeom read the laboratory report a third time, as though repetition might rearrange the words. It did not. The baby girl photographed beside Kojo and Sena was biologically related to his father. Not a distant relative, not an administrative mistake. A daughter, his sister. Adwoa watched him lower himself into the chair. For the first time since she had known him, Park Do-gyeom looked like a man whose wealth could solve absolutely nothing. How old would she be now? Adwoa asked. Mrs. Tete checked the transfer record. 6. Approximately 5 weeks older than your boys. Do-gyeom looked up. Who was her mother? That information was never entered here. Then Lee Sang-won took her? Mrs. Tete nodded. He signed the guardianship transfer. Do-gyeom stood. Is there an address? The original Korean address is outdated. She paused. But there is a forwarding contact attached to a later records request. Adwoa leaned forward. Later? Mrs. Tete opened another page. Someone requested Mina's infant records 18 months ago. Who? Mrs. Tete turned the folder toward them. Do-gyeom recognized the name immediately. Park Sun-ok, his grandmother. Outside the clinic, the afternoon sun washed the pavement in gold, but neither Adwoa nor Do-gyeom moved toward the waiting car. She lied about everything, he said. Adwoa folded her arms. Not everything. He looked at her. She told you she was afraid. That part might be true. Fear doesn't excuse this. No, but understanding why she did it may tell us where Mina is. Do-gyeom studied Adwoa's face. 6 years ago, he would have mistaken her calmness for forgiveness. Now he understood it differently. She could be furious without becoming cruel. Why are you helping me? He asked. Adwoa looked toward the road. I'm helping that little girl. The answer humbled him. His phone rang. His assistant in Korea had finally located Lee Sang-won. Do-gyeom answered immediately. Where is he? His expression changed as he listened. Since when? Adwoa watched him carefully. He ended the call. Sang-won left Korea 5 years ago. He lives in Ghana. Where? Cape Coast. Mrs. Tete had given them the forwarding address. By late afternoon, they stood outside a beautiful white house overlooking a quiet stretch of ocean. No guards, no luxury vehicles. Bougainvillea climbed along the front wall, and children's paintings were visible through an open veranda. Adwoa pressed the bell. A Ghanaian woman in her early 40s opened the door. Her name was Adwoa Mensim, and the moment Do-gyeom introduced himself, her welcoming expression disappeared. "You shouldn't be here." Do-gyeom's voice remained calm. "I'm looking for Lee Sang-won. He isn't here." "Then I'm looking for Mina." Adwoa's hand tightened around the door. Adwoa noticed. "We don't want to frighten her," she said gently. "We only learned today that she exists." Adwoa looked at her. Something in Adwoa's face softened her resistance. "Mr. Lee raised Mina from infancy," she said. "He loves her as his own daughter." "Where is he?" Do-gyeom asked. "At the cultural center. Mina has a piano recital this afternoon." Do-gyeom stepped back. "Can you take us there?" Adwoa shook her head. "Before you see that child, you need to understand something. Mr. Lee didn't steal her. He was asked to protect her." "From whom?" "Your family." The words landed heavily. Adwoa continued. "Your father discovered Mina existed shortly before he died. He wanted to acknowledge her publicly. Someone inside the Park family found out." Do-gyeom's eyes narrowed. "My grandmother?" "No." That single word changed everything again. Adwoa looked toward the street before lowering her voice. "Your grandmother helped get Mina out." Adwoa stared at her. "Then why attach Mina to my hospital file?" "Because your file provided temporary legal protection while new guardianship papers were prepared." Park Sun-ok believed nobody would search for a Korean infant under the records of a Ghanaian mother who had already left Korea. Suddenly, the grandmother's choices looked different. Still wrong, still devastating, but perhaps not entirely malicious. If you believe children should never have to carry the consequences of adults' secrets, comment truth below, because the truth Do-gyeom was chasing was becoming more complicated with every answer. 20 minutes later, they entered the Cape Coast Cultural Center. Sunlight filled the small performance hall. A children's piano recital was already underway. Do-gyeom stopped near the back. On stage sat a little girl in a pale yellow dress, her black hair gathered neatly behind her ears. Her fingers moved confidently across the piano keys. Adwoa looked at Do-gyeom. His eyes had filled before he could hide it. Mina finished. The audience applauded. She smiled and stood. Then her gaze traveled toward the back of the hall. She saw Do-gyeom. The smile vanished. Mina stepped away from the piano and stared directly at him. Then she whispered something that Adwoa could not hear. Lee Sang-won, seated in the front row, turned around. His face went completely still. Mina suddenly ran toward him. "Papa," she said, clutching his hand. Then she pointed at Do-gyeom. "That's the man Grandma showed me." Do-gyeom's heart stopped. Lee Sang-won stood. "Do-gyeom, why does she know my face?" Sang-won looked at Mina, then back at him. "Because your grandmother believed you would eventually find her." "Why?" Sang-won's expression hardened. "Because Mina wasn't the secret she was protecting you from." He paused. "Your father's will was." Do-gyeom stared at Lee Sang-won across the bright recital hall. Around them, parents gathered children, teachers folded music stands, and afternoon sunlight stretched across the polished floor, but Do-gyeom heard none of it. "What was in my father's will?" Sang-won looked toward Mina. "Not here." 10 minutes later, they sat in a quiet courtyard behind the cultural center. Mina remained inside with Adwoa, eating cake with the other children. Adwoa sat beside Do-gyeom while Sang-won placed an old leather document case on the table between them. "Your father gave this to me 3 days before he died," Sang-won said. Do-gyeom's eyes fixed on the case. "Why didn't you give it to me?" "Because he told me not to. He was my father, and he was terrified." Do-gyeom's expression tightened. Sang-won opened the case. Inside was a sealed copy of a handwritten testament. "Your father discovered that several senior family members had been moving company assets through private trusts for years. He planned to expose them." "Who?" Do-gyeom asked. Sang-won hesitated. "Your uncle, Park Jun-suk, led it." Do-gyeom leaned back. Jun-suk had stood beside him at his father's memorial. He had advised him through the succession crisis. He had been the man who repeatedly warned him that Adwoa's presence might complicate the board. Suddenly, old memories began rearranging themselves. "And Mina?" Adwoa asked. Sang-won's expression softened. Mina's mother was a Korean architect named Yoon Sola. She worked on one of Murray Haven's heritage projects. Your father had a relationship with her during a long separation from your mother years earlier. Do-gyeom said nothing. He learned about Mina shortly before his death. Seola had already passed away from an illness, leaving Mina with a temporary guardian. Your father intended to acknowledge her and place a portion of his personal estate in trust for her. So Jun-suk knew. Yes. And he wanted the inheritance. Sang-won nodded. More than that, your father's revised will would have removed Jun-suk from several family trusts entirely. Adwoa looked at Do-gyeom. That explains why your grandmother hid Mina. Partly, Sang-won said. Do-gyeom noticed the word immediately. Partly. Sang-won slid the testament toward him. Read the final section. Do-gyeom unfolded the paper. His eyes moved across several lines before stopping. His face changed. Adwoa leaned closer. What does it say? He read aloud quietly. Any controlling shares assigned to me shall transfer into a protected family trust upon my death, with voting rights temporarily divided between my lawful descendants and any legally recognized grandchildren. Adwoa frowned. Grandchildren? Sang-won nodded. Your father changed the structure after learning Mina existed. But there was a problem. At the time, Do-gyeom had no children. Adwoa went still. Sang-won looked directly at her. Then your pregnancy became known. Silence settled over the courtyard. Do-gyeom's eyes lifted slowly. My sons affected the succession. Yes. Before they were even born. Yes. Adwoa stood. She suddenly understood why someone had inserted guardianship clauses into the documents. Why the board had become obsessed with Do-gyeom's marriage. Why his grandmother had panicked. Kojo and Sena were never merely children to the people surrounding Mirai Haven. They were future voting rights. That contract wasn't about taking my babies because I was foreign, Adwoa said. Sang-won shook his head. Not entirely. It was designed to ensure the family council controlled where any heirs lived and who influenced them. Her eyes filled with anger. Children reduced to shares. Do-gyeom looked sickened. I signed those papers without reading them. Adwoa turned toward him. That still matters. I know. There was no defensiveness in his voice. I will live with that. Sang-won pulled another document from the case. Your grandmother discovered the clause after you signed. She tried to reverse it quietly. But Jun-suk already knew Adwoa was pregnant. Do-gyeom's head snapped up. How? Someone at the clinic contacted the family office. Then why let Adwoa leave? Sang-won looked at him for a long moment. Because your grandmother believed leaving Korea was the only way to keep the children outside Jun-suk's reach until the board stabilized. Adwoa's anger faltered. She wanted me to leave? Yes. So the cruel message was deliberate. Adwoa closed her eyes. 6 years of heartbreak had begun as protection disguised as rejection. It did not make the pain disappear. It made it more complicated. Do-gyeom looked toward the hall where Mina was laughing with other children. Why come forward now? Sang-won's face changed. Because Jun-suk knows the twins exist. Adwoa's eyes opened. How? Your grandmother contacted me yesterday. Someone accessed an old family archive and found the clinic connection. Do-gyeom's phone vibrated at that exact moment. A message from his assistant appeared. He read it once and immediately stood. What is it? Adwoa asked. He turned the screen toward her. A formal board notice had been issued in Korea. Park Jun-suk was calling an emergency succession meeting in 48 hours. Attached beneath it was a list of individuals whose legal identities were being reviewed. 3 names appeared together. Adwoa Mensim, Sena Mensim, Mina Lee. Do-gyeom read the 3 names again. Adwoa Mensim, Sena Mensim, Mina Lee. For 6 years, the boys had lived ordinary lives far away from boardrooms, inheritance disputes, and the Park family's obsession with control. Now, with one document, they had been dragged into a battle they did not even know existed. Adwoa took the phone from his hand. What does legal identities being reviewed mean? It means Jun-suk wants the board to decide whether the children qualify under my father's trust. They are children. To him, they are voting rights. Her expression hardened. Then we don't go. Do-gyeom looked at her. If we don't, he can argue that their identities are unverified and request temporary control over the trust. You're saying he can benefit from our absence? Yes. Adwoa returned the phone. Then you go. Adwoa. I said you go. Her voice remained calm, but Do-gyeom heard the fear beneath it. My sons are not walking into a room full of adults who have already spent 6 years discussing their lives as if they are assets. Sang-won leaned forward. They may not need to attend. Both of them looked at him. The trust only requires legal verification. Certified birth records and a kinship test should be enough. Adwoa's shoulders loosened slightly. And Mina? Sang-won glanced toward the recital hall. I won't put her in that room either. Do-gyeom nodded. Then I'll face Jun-suk alone. No, Adwoa said. He looked at her. I'm coming. You just said. I said the children aren't going. She held his gaze. But 6 years ago, people made decisions about my family while I stood outside locked doors. I'm not standing outside anymore. Something passed between them. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But respect had returned quietly, and with it came the first dangerous trace of the closeness they had once shared. The next morning, bright sunlight filled the dining room of Abina's home in Accra. Kojo was spreading too much jam across toast. Sina was carefully arranging slices of banana into a straight line. Do-gyeom sat across from them, uncertain what role he was allowed to occupy. Kojo looked up. Are you going back to Korea? For a meeting. Because of us. Do-gyeom paused. Adwoa, standing near the window, watched him carefully. Partly, he said. Sena frowned. Did we do something wrong? The question struck Do-gyeom harder than any accusation from an adult. No. He leaned forward. Listen to me. Neither of you has done anything wrong. Adults made complicated choices before you were born. None of those choices belong to you. Kojo studied him. Will you come back? Do-gyeom looked at Adwoa before answering. If your mom allows me to. Adwoa almost smiled. Almost. Kojo pointed his spoon at her. Mum says people should keep promises. Do-gyeom nodded. Then I'll make one carefully. He looked at both boys. I will come back. Later that morning, while Adwoa packed documents into a leather folder, Abena entered the room carrying an old wooden box. There's something you should see before you leave. Adwoa frowned. What is that? You left it here when you came back from Korea 6 years ago. Inside were photographs, scholarship papers, receipts, and letters she had never opened. At the bottom lay a cream envelope bearing no return address. Adwoa stared at it. I've never seen this. It arrived about a month after the boys were born. Why didn't you give it to me? Abena looked guilty. You were barely sleeping. You cried whenever Korea was mentioned. I put it away and forgot. Adwoa opened the envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter. The first line stopped her cold. Adwoa, if you are reading this, then my grandson failed to find you before I did. Park Sunok. Adwoa sat on the edge of the bed and continued reading. I know you believe Do-gyeom rejected you. He did not. I made you believe that because I thought distance would protect your children. I was wrong to steal your choice. But there is something more dangerous than the guardianship agreement. Jun-suk believes one of your children may eventually expose what he did to the trust. Adwoa's fingers tightened. One of your children, not both. She kept reading. The twins were tested after birth without your permission. One result was ordinary. The other revealed something I have hidden for 6 years because I did not know whom to trust. Adwoa stopped. Her heart began pounding. Do-gyeom entered the room behind her. What happened? She slowly handed him the letter. He read the next line aloud. Sina is not only my grandson. Silence. Do-gyeom looked up. What does that mean? Adwoa turned the page. There was one final sentence. Sina carries the genetic marker that proves Jin-suk is not a Park by blood. The letter shook slightly in Do-gyeom's hand. How can Sina prove anything about Jun-suk? Adwoa asked. Sang-won answered when they called him minutes later. Your father carried a rare inherited Y chromosome marker, he explained. Do-gyeom has it. Sina has it. Years ago, Jun-suk underwent testing during a family medical study. He didn't. Silence filled Abina's room. So my father knew? Do-gyeom asked. He suspected. Your grandmother confirmed it after his death. And she hid that too. Because exposing Jun-suk's parentage would have destroyed his mother publicly. She chose silence until he began using the family trust against the children. Adwoa looked toward the doorway, where Sena's laughter drifted from downstairs. Then nobody uses his DNA without his consent again. Do-gyeom looked at her. Agreed. 48 hours later, morning sunlight flooded the boardroom of Mireille Haven Group in Seoul. No children were present. Only lawyers, trustees, family representatives, Adwoa, Do-gyeom, Sang-won, and Park Jun-suk, who sat at the far end of the table with the confidence of a man who believed everyone else had arrived too late. The alleged heirs have not appeared, Jun-suk said. Their claims should be suspended. Adwoa placed a folder on the table. They are not claims. They are children. Jun-suk's gaze moved to her. And you are? The woman your family discussed for 6 years without inviting into the room. The chairman requested documentation. Certified birth records were presented. Independent kinship testing confirmed Do-gyeom as Kojo and Sena's father. Mina's records confirmed her as the late Park patriarch's daughter. Jun-suk's expression barely changed until Song-won placed the original will beside the documents. This copy was witnessed before Mr. Park's death, he said. It supersedes the version held by the family office. Jun-suk leaned forward. That document was concealed. To protect it from you, Do-gyeom replied. And now you expect this board to divide control among children raised outside this family? Adwoa's eyes hardened. No. We expect you to stop pretending control is the same thing as family. The trustees reviewed the will. Then Do-gyeom did something nobody expected. He surrendered his temporary voting authority over the children's shares to an independent trust until they reached adulthood. No Park Family Council will decide where they live, what schools they attend, or who raises them, he said. Their inheritance will exist for them, not the other way around. Adwoa stared at him. 6 years earlier, she had fled because she believed he would choose power over their children. Now, in the room where that power mattered most, he gave it away. Jun-suk's confidence cracked. You cannot dismantle decades of family structure because she returned. Do-gyeom looked at Adwoa. She didn't return to save me. Then he faced his uncle. She returned to leave me. The trustees voted. The guardianship clause was revoked. Mina, Kojo, and Sena were legally protected from family control. Jun-suk's authority over the trust was suspended pending review of the financial transfers exposed in the original will. His parentage never had to be announced publicly. Adwoa insisted on that. Truth should stop harm, she told Do-gyeom. It doesn't have to become humiliation. That afternoon, they visited Park Sunok at her countryside home. She bowed deeply to Adwoa. I stole your choice. Adwoa did not comfort her. Yes. I thought I was protecting you. Protection without consent can still become cruelty. Sunok's eyes filled. I know. Adwoa placed the old letter on the table. The boys can know you, but there will be no secrets around them again. Sunok nodded through tears. Several weeks later, on a bright morning in Accra, Do-gyeom stood outside the boys' school, holding 2 lunch bags, because Kojo had forgotten his, and Sena had decided his brother should not be embarrassed alone. Adwoa approached. You're becoming suspiciously useful. I'm learning. Slowly. He smiled. Very slowly. The divorce papers were still unsigned. Then beneath a flowering tree, Do-gyeom said, I don't want you to stay because of the boys. Good. His expression fell. She almost laughed. I want you to earn the right to ask me for something beyond co-parenting. Hope appeared cautiously in his eyes. Can I? Not today. Tomorrow? You're negotiating already. I'm a businessman. She smiled fully for the first time in 6 years. Across the courtyard, Kojo shouted, Mom, Mr. Park is smiling weird. Sena corrected him. That's because he likes Mum. Adwoa laughed until tears appeared. Nothing was magically repaired. Trust would take time. Love would have to be rebuilt in daylight, choice by choice, truth by truth. But for the first time, their future was not being written by a board, an inheritance, or fear. It belonged to them. If this story reminded you that real love is not proven by possession but by truth, patience, and the freedom to choose each other again, like the video, subscribe, and share it with someone who still believes second chances should be earned.
What a journey. Adwoa came back believing she was simply closing a painful chapter of her life. She thought signing those divorce papers would finally put 6 years of heartbreak behind her. But instead, that one decision uncovered secrets that had shaped not only her life, but the lives of her children without her knowledge. And for me, the most powerful part of this story wasn't the money, the inheritance, or even the shocking family revelations. It was the lesson about choices. Adwoa had her choice taken away from her. Do-gyeom allowed other people to make decisions he should have questioned. And even Sunok, despite believing she was protecting the family, learned that good intentions don't erase the pain caused by taking away another person's right to choose. But I also loved that Adwoa didn't immediately run back into Do-gyeom's arms, simply because the truth came out. Forgiveness doesn't always mean everything instantly returns to the way it was. Sometimes trust has to be rebuilt slowly, through actions, consistency, and time. And Do-gyeom finally understood that. Instead of demanding another chance, he started becoming the father his sons needed, and allowed Adwoa to decide what happened next. Now I want to hear from you. If you were Adwoa, after everything that happened, would you eventually give Do-gyeom another chance? Or would you sign those divorce papers and move forward with your life? Tell me your answer in the comments, because I know this one is going to divide the room. And if this story kept you watching until the very end, like the video, subscribe, and share it with someone who loves emotional stories with unexpected twists. Until the next story, remember, sometimes a second chance isn't about returning to the past. It's about deciding whether someone has earned a place in your future.